Why aren't you trembling, human? One word from me, and my pet will devour you. The bitter wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Nyxhaven, carrying stinging crystals of ice that would have blinded any unprotected eyes. Commander Stephen Drake stood unmoved, his advanced battle armor barely registering the sub-zero temperatures. Through his helmet's enhanced vision, he studied the imposing figure before him, an alien warrior woman astride a massive beast that seemed carved from the very ice itself. The creature's crystalline fur rippled in the Arctic gale, its azure eyes fixed on Stephen with predatory intensity. But it was the rider who commanded his attention. Her lavender skin seemed to glow against her black combat suit and ornate armor, the golden patterns etched into the metal pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Her silver-white hair whipped around her face like living mercury, framing features that were both beautiful and lethal. "I ask again, human," she called out, her voice carrying both authority and genuine curiosity. "Why do you not tremble? One word from me, and Frostfang will tear you apart." Stephen allowed himself a slight smirk, though she couldn't see it behind his visor. Maybe I just don't scare easily, Your Highness." Her eyes narrowed at his use of the title. "You know who I am? Princess Nyraxa of the Stellar Dominion? Hard to miss the royal insignia on your armor." He gestured casually at the intricate patterns. "Though I have to say, you're a long way from your throne." The princess's lips curved into a dangerous smile as she gracefully dismounted her beast. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as she approached him. The massive creature remained perfectly still, its gleaming fangs still bared in silent threat. "Clever human," she purred, circling him like a predator. "But knowledge won't save you. This world belongs to the Dominion now. Your presence here is, unauthorized." Stephen tracked her movement while maintaining his relaxed posture. "Funny thing about humans, we tend to go where we want, authorized or not." "Such arrogance," Nyraxa said, stopping directly in front of him. She was tall for her species, nearly matching his height. "Most species know better than to challenge the Dominion. Yet here you stand, alone, facing both me and my war beast without a trace of fear." "Maybe I'm just enjoying the view," Stephen replied with deliberate insolence. A flash of something, surprise, perhaps even amusement, crossed her exotic features. "You dare to flirt with me? While staring death in the face? Would you prefer I beg for mercy?" "It would be more appropriate," she said, taking another step closer. The mystical symbols on her battle bracers pulsed brighter, though perhaps less interesting. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Stephen could smell her exotic scent, something like winter flowers and ozone. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but something told him that simple submission would earn him a quick death, while defiance, well, that might just keep him alive long enough to turn the tables. "Tell me, brave human," Nyraxa said, reaching up to tap his visor with one elegant finger. "What brings you to my frozen world? Surely not just to trade barbs with its princess." Stephen caught her wrist before she could withdraw it. A bold move, perhaps too bold given how her war beast growled and took a menacing step forward. But Nyraxa herself didn't pull away. Instead, her amber eyes widened slightly, that dangerous smile growing broader. "Would you believe I'm here for the weather?" he asked. "I would not," she replied. "Remove your helmet. If we're to continue this discussion, I wish to see your face." Stephen hesitated. Removing his helmet would expose him to the bitter cold, and more importantly, leave him vulnerable. But sometimes the greatest risk offered the greatest reward. With his free hand, he reached up and disengaged the seals. The bitter wind bit at his face as he removed the helmet, but he kept his eyes locked on hers. Nyraxa studied his features with undisguised interest. "Handsome for a human," she mused. "And those eyes, they remind me of the frozen lakes of my homeworld. So deep, so unyielding." "You should see them in better lighting," he said. "Over dinner, perhaps." Her laughter was like crystal chimes in the wind. "You continue to surprise me, human. Most would be begging for their lives by now." "Stephen," he said. "My name is Stephen Drake." "Stephen Drake," she repeated, testing the name. "You do realize I could have Frostfang and you with a single command?" "You could," he agreed, "but then you'd never find out why I'm really here. And something tells me you're curious." The wind howled between them as Naraxa considered his words. Her war beast shifted restlessly, its massive claws leaving deep gouges in the ice, but she held up one hand to keep it at bay. "Perhaps I am curious," she admitted. "It's not often I encounter a human who can match my particular temperament." "Very well, Stephen Drake. You have my attention. For the moment." She withdrew her wrist from his grip with deliberate slowness, her fingers trailing across his armored palm. "But know this, one wrong move, one hint of deception, and Frostfang will have his feast." "Understood, Your Highness. Though I have to wonder, what makes you so sure I came alone?" Her amber eyes narrowed dangerously. "A bluff, human. I've scanned this entire region. There are no other life signs within 50 kilometers." Stephen smiled, the kind of smile that had made more than one opponent reconsider their position. "Technology can be fooled, Princess, even Dominion tech. You're either very brave or very foolish," she said, but her tone held more intrigue than threat now. "Perhaps both. Come, my base is 2 kilometers east. We'll continue this conversation somewhere more civilized." She turned and walked back to her mount with practiced grace. The way she moved in that form-fitting armor was almost certainly calculated to draw his attention, and damn if it wasn't working. "Unless," she added, glancing over her shoulder, "you'd prefer to remain here and freeze." Stephen replaced his helmet and checked his weapons with casual deliberation. "Lead the way, Your Highness, though I hope your hospitality includes something warm to drink. Oh, I think you'll find our refreshments quite stimulating." She mounted Frostfang with fluid ease. "Try to keep up, Stephen Drake. It would be a shame to lose such entertaining prey to the storm." As they began their trek across the frozen landscape, Stephen maintained a careful distance from both princess and beast. He'd bought himself some time and piqued her interest, exactly as planned. Now came the delicate part, maintaining that interest while gathering the intelligence he needed. What Naraxa didn't know was that his presence here was far from random. The Dominion's sudden interest in this seemingly worthless ice world had Earth's military intelligence very concerned, and Stephen had a sneaking suspicion that the beautiful but dangerous princess before him was key to understanding why. The wind picked up, driving sheets of snow between them as they traveled. Through the swirling white, he caught glimpses of Naraxa's silver hair streaming behind her like a banner. She rode with the confidence of someone who owned not just this world, but everything her gaze fell upon. Well, he thought with grim amusement, she was about to learn that humans weren't so easily owned. The Dominion base rose from the frozen landscape like a dark crystal, its angular surfaces absorbing what little light filtered through the perpetual storm. Stephen followed Naraxa through massive doors that parted silently, revealing an interior that managed to be both austere and decadent, typical Dominion architecture. The temperature shift was immediate and dramatic. While his armor had protected him from the worst of the cold, the warmth inside the base felt almost tropical by comparison. Frostfang padded off to what appeared to be a specialized habitat area, leaving Stephen alone with the princess. "Your armor," Naraxa said, gesturing to a nearby alcove. "You may store it there." Stephen raised an eyebrow behind his visor. "Expecting me to disarm myself so quickly, princess?" She laughed, the sound echoing off the crystalline walls. "If I wanted you dead, Stephen Drake, you would never have made it inside." Her fingers worked at the clasp of her own armor, removing pieces with practiced efficiency. "Besides, I prefer to look my guests in the eye when I interrogate them." The underlying threat was clear, but so was the playful glint in her amber eyes. Stephen made a show of considering before beginning to remove his own armor. Beneath it, he wore a close-fitting black bodysuit, similar to what he'd glimpsed under Naraxa's armor. Her appreciative gaze as he stripped down to the bodysuit was anything but subtle. Perhaps humans aren't as physically inferior as our scientists claim." "Happy to help advance your research," he replied, noting how her own bodysuit left little to the imagination. The lavender skin beneath had an almost luminescent quality that drew the eye to every curve. "Princess Naraxa," a sharp voice cut through their exchange. "What is the meaning of this?" 3 Dominion nobles strode into the chamber, their ornate armor marking them as high-ranking military officers. The one who had spoken, a male with deep blue skin and ceremonial scars across his face, looked at Stephen with undisguised contempt. "General Crixus," Naraxa acknowledged coolly, "I wasn't aware you were monitoring the entrance protocols. When unauthorized aliens enter a classified Dominion facility, it becomes my concern." Crixus's hand rested on an elaborate weapon at his hip, especially when said alien is human. "Are you questioning my judgment, General?" Naraxa's voice carried a dangerous edge that made even the battle-hardened officers tense. "With respect, Your Highness," another officer, this one female with scaled skin, interjected, "the human presence here compromises security. The project is my project," Naraxa cut her off. "Or have you forgotten whose research made it possible?" Stephen watched the exchange with keen interest. Whatever project they were discussing, it was clearly significant enough to have multiple high-ranking Dominion officials on edge. He filed away every detail, every reaction for later analysis. "The human should be eliminated," Crixus insisted, "or at the very least imprisoned for questioning." "He is my prisoner," Naraxa said smoothly, "and I will question him personally." The general's eyes narrowed. "Your recent fascination with human culture is concerning, Princess. Some might question where your loyalties lie." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Naraxa stepped forward, her presence suddenly overwhelming despite her relative state of undress. Or perhaps because of it, there was something terrifying about someone who could project such absolute authority while wearing so little. "Choose your next words carefully, General," she said softly. "They may be your last." The tension crackled like static electricity as Naraxa and Crixus faced each other. Stephen maintained his relaxed posture, but his muscles were coiled and ready. If this turned violent, he'd need to move fast. "Your father, the Emperor, would not approve of this irregularity," Crixus pressed, though he took a subtle step backward. "My father isn't here," Naraxa replied. Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am, and I find it fascinating that you seem more concerned with my human guest than with the project deadlines you've repeatedly failed to meet." The female officer with scaled skin shifted uncomfortably. "The delays are due to unexpected complications in the crystalline matrix, which is precisely why new perspectives might prove valuable." Naraxa's smile was razor-sharp. "Humans have a remarkable talent for unconventional solutions." Stephen caught the subtle emphasis on unconventional and filed it away. Whatever they were working on involved crystal technology, interesting given the crystalline nature of the base itself. "You can't seriously suggest allowing a human access to," Crixus began. "I suggest you remember your place," Naraxa cut him off. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss your concerns with Frostfang?" The threat hung in the air like frost. Even Stephen felt a chill at the casual mention of her war beast. The general's face darkened, but he offered a stiff bow. "As you wish, Your Highness. But I will be noting this in my report to the Imperial Court." "Do so," Naraxa said dismissively. "Now leave us. I have a prisoner to interrogate." The officers withdrew, though Crixus cast one final venomous glare at Stephen before departing. Once they were alone, Naraxa turned to him with a predatory smile. "Well, Stephen Drake, shall we begin your questioning?" "Depends on your interrogation techniques," he replied, matching her tone. "I have to warn you, I'm resistant to conventional methods." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her lavender skin. "Oh, I assure you, my methods are anything but conventional." Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, and Stephen felt a tingling sensation where they touched. Some kind of bioelectric field, he realized. The Dominion were known for their biological enhancements. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Most species recoil from our touch. Yet you..." Her fingers continued their exploration, sending pleasant shivers down his spine. "You lean into it. Maybe I just like living dangerously." "Indeed." Her amber eyes locked with his. "Tell me, Stephen Drake, what do you know of crystalline matrices?" "Enough to be intrigued by whatever you're building here," he answered honestly. No point denying his interest now. She laughed softly. "Clever man, but dangerous knowledge can be intoxicating." Her other hand came to rest on his chest, directly over his heart. Are you prepared for the consequences? The air between them felt charged, and not just from her bioelectric field. The predatory gleam in her eyes had transformed into something else, something that made his pulse quicken. I thought I was supposed to be trembling in fear, he reminded her, referencing their first encounter. Perhaps I prefer you trembling for other reasons. Her voice had dropped to a sultry purr. Though I warn you, coupling with a Dominion Royal is not for the faint of heart. Stephen slid his hand around her waist, pulling her closer. The bodysuit material felt alive under his touch, and almost responsive. Good thing I'm not faint of heart. Her lips curved into a dangerous smile as she pressed against him. No, you're not, are you? Such boldness deserves reward. Her fingers traced patterns on his chest that left trails of tingling sensation. Though I should warn you, my people's passion can be overwhelming for lesser species. Try me, Stephen challenged, his hand sliding up her back to tangle in her silver-white hair. It felt like liquid silk between his fingers, carrying a subtle charge that made his skin tingle. So commanding, she purred. Most would be begging for mercy by now. Not really my style, he replied, using his grip on her hair to tilt her head back slightly. The exposed line of her throat was mesmerizing, her lavender skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. No, she agreed, her amber eyes darkening with desire. Your style is far more interesting. She pressed her palm flat against his chest, and suddenly Stephen felt a wave of sensation wash over him. Pleasure mixed with an edge of danger that made his head spin. Some kind of biochemical reaction, he realized dimly. The Dominion were masters of biological manipulation. That's just a taste, she whispered against his ear. Are you sure you can handle more? In response, Stephen captured her lips with his own. The kiss was electric, literally. Tiny sparks danced where their lips met, sending jolts of pleasure through his entire body. Naraxa made a sound of surprise and approval, pressing closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, her eyes were glowing with an inner fire. Well, she said, voice husky, perhaps humans are more resilient than we thought. Happy to continue proving that theory, Stephen replied, his own voice rough with desire. She laughed, the sound rich and full of promise. My private chambers are more suitable for such scientific exploration. Her fingers traced his jawline again. Unless you're having second thoughts, lead the way, Your Highness. As they moved through the crystalline corridors, Stephen maintained enough presence of mind to note their route and the security measures they passed. But most of his attention was focused on the way Naraxa moved ahead of him, her bodysuit catching the light in ways that made his mouth go dry. They passed several other Dominion officers who quickly averted their eyes. Whether from respect for their princess or disapproval of her chosen companion, Stephen couldn't tell. Not that he particularly cared at the moment. Naraxa's private chambers were as luxurious as he'd expected, all flowing crystal formations and subtle lighting that seemed to pulse in time with their movements. But he had little time to appreciate the decor before she was pressing him against a wall, her body fitting against his perfectly. Last chance to run, human, she breathed against his lips. What happens next will change everything. Stephen pulled her closer, feeling the energy crackling between them. I'm counting on it. What followed was unlike anything in human experience. A fusion of physical and energy-based intimacy that left them both gasping and glowing. Quite literally, in Naraxa's case, her lavender skin emanating pulses of light that matched their rhythm. Hours later, as they lay entwined on sheets that seemed to be woven from starlight, Naraxa traced patterns on his chest with a satisfied smile. You continue to surprise me, Stephen Drake. Few species can match Dominion stamina. Humans are full of surprises, he replied, running his fingers through her silver hair. Though I have to admit, some of what you can do is beyond human capability. She laughed softly. Perhaps that's why I find you so fascinating. You know you're outmatched, yet you rise to every challenge. Her amber eyes met his. Even now in my bed, you're gathering intelligence, aren't you? Stephen didn't deny it. There was no point. She'd already proven remarkably adept at reading him. Would you respect me if I wasn't? No, she admitted, propping herself up on one elbow to study him. The sheet slipped down, revealing more of her luminescent skin. Just as I wouldn't respect myself if I wasn't using this intimacy to evaluate you. And how am I measuring up, he asked, trailing his fingers along her arm and watching the way her skin brightened at his touch. Impressively, her smile turned predatory again. Though I'm still deciding whether that makes you more valuable as an ally or more dangerous as a potential enemy. Why not both? He pulled her closer, enjoying the way her bioelectric field made his skin tingle where they touched. The best allies are often the ones who could be dangerous enemies. She laughed, the sound rich with genuine amusement. You truly don't fear me, do you? Even knowing what I am, what I could do to you? I respect what you could do, he corrected. Fear would imply I think you're going to do it. Such confidence, she murmured, trailing her fingers down his chest. Tell me, Stephen Drake, what would you say if I offered you a position here? Not as a prisoner, but as something else. Depends on the position, he replied with deliberate suggestiveness, making her laugh again. I mean within the project, she said, though her wandering hands suggested she wasn't entirely focused on business. Your perspective could be valuable. And what would your father, the Emperor, think about that? Her eyes flashed. My father's opinion matters less than results. The crystalline matrix project is vital to the Dominion's future. But we've hit obstacles. Fresh insights could be useful. Stephen filed away this confirmation of the project's importance. And General Crixus can feed himself to Frostfang if he objects. Her tone was dismissive, but there was steel beneath it. I am Princess of the Dominion. If I choose to take a human lover and technical advisor, that is my prerogative. Lover and technical advisor? Stephen raised an eyebrow. That's quite a promotion from prisoner who should be eliminated. You've proven your worth in multiple ways, she purred, pressing closer. Though I may require further demonstrations. The way her skin began to glow suggested exactly what kind of demonstrations she had in mind. But before things could progress further, a chime sounded through the chamber. Your Highness, a voice called through the communication system. General Crixus requests your presence in the main laboratory. There's been an incident with the Matrix. Naraxa's expression darkened. Of course there has. She rose gracefully, her bodysuit materializing around her as if summoned. Duty calls, it seems. Stephen sat up, his own bodysuit responding to his mental command to reform. Want company? She considered him for a moment, then smiled. Yes, actually. Let's see how our dear general handles that. As they prepared to leave her chambers, Naraxa caught his arm. Remember, Stephen Drake, you've seen sides of me few ever have. That makes you either very privileged or very vulnerable. Why not both? He replied with a grin. Her answering laugh echoed through the crystalline corridors as they made their way to what promised to be a very interesting confrontation. The main laboratory was a cathedral of crystal and light, with towering matrices that pulsed with inner radiance. As Stephen and Naraxa entered, he immediately noticed the tension in the air. General Crixus stood near the central control platform, his blue-skinned face carefully composed, but his eyes blazing with barely concealed fury at Stephen's presence. Your Highness, Crixus bowed stiffly. I see you've brought your, consultant. I have, Naraxa replied coolly. Now, what's this incident that required my immediate attention? The general gestured to a display showing complex energy patterns. The Matrix is experiencing unexpected fluctuations. We believe it may be due to external interference. Stephen studied the readouts, noting patterns that seemed oddly familiar. Those energy signatures, they're not random. Crixus's head snapped toward him. You dare to... Let him speak, Naraxa commanded, her voice carrying that edge of absolute authority that made even the general fall silent. These patterns, Stephen continued, stepping closer to the display, they're similar to Earth's quantum communication protocols. Someone's trying to hack your system. Impossible, Crixus sneered. Human technology is primitive compared to... He's right, the scaled female officer from earlier interrupted, checking her own readings. The patterns match known human quantum signatures. Naraxa's eyes narrowed. Interesting timing, wouldn't you say, Stephen? These attempts beginning shortly after your arrival? Very interesting, he agreed, meeting her gaze steadily. Almost as interesting as the fact that these signatures are being broadcast from within this facility. The laboratory fell silent. Nirax's amber eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with dangerous intent. "Explain. These patterns are too clean, too perfect," Stephen said, pointing to the specific sections of the display. "Real quantum hacking would show degradation from atmospheric interference. This is being generated locally. Someone's trying to make it look like a human attack." Crixus's hand moved toward his weapon. "Or perhaps you're trying to deflect suspicion." "Stand down, General," Niraxa commanded. Her voice was soft, but carried lethal promise. Stephen, continue." "The question isn't who's trying to hack your system," Stephen said, keeping one eye on Crixus. "It's who benefits from making it look like humans are responsible." Understanding flashed in Niraxa's eyes. She spun toward Crixus, her body crackling with bioelectric energy. "You've been sabotaging the project." The general's face twisted into a snarl as he drew his weapon. "The project was doomed the moment you allowed your fascination with humans to cloud your judgment." Several things happened at once. Crixus fired his weapon, a burst of energy that would have vaporized Niraxa if Stephen hadn't tackled her aside. The scaled officer drew her own weapon, but hesitated, clearly uncertain where her loyalties should lie. And throughout the laboratory, alarms began blaring as the crystal matrices pulsed with dangerous intensity. "The matrices are destabilizing," one of the technicians shouted. "Chain reaction imminent." Niraxa rolled to her feet with predatory grace, her bodysuit morphing into combat configuration. "You fool," she snarled at Crixus. "You'll destroy the entire facility." "Better destroyed than corrupted by human influence," the general spat, firing another blast that forced them behind a crystal column. "The Emperor will understand once I explain how his daughter was compromised by human seduction." Stephen felt Niraxa tense beside him. "My father," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "knows better than to believe I could be so easily manipulated." "Does he?" Crixus laughed. "The evidence suggests otherwise. Your increasing fascination with humans. Your reluctance to proceed with the original plan for Earth." He fired again, the blast splintering crystal shards around them. "And now, taking a human lover? The court will see it as proof of corruption." "The only corruption here," Stephen called out, "is your willingness to destroy valuable research to maintain your prejudices." "Silence, human!" Another blast, closer this time. "Your kind's stubborn resilience has blinded the princess to the proper order of things. The Dominion conquers. Other species submit. That is the way of the universe." "And yet," Stephen replied, catching Niraxa's eye and gesturing toward a secondary control panel, "here you are, trembling at the thought of human potential." The taunt had its intended effect. Crixus roared in fury and charged their position, giving Stephen the opening he needed to dive for the controls. His fingers flew over the alien interface, applying principles of quantum mechanics that he'd learned in studying Earth's own experiments. "Whatever you're doing," Niraxa said, engaging Crixus in close combat, her movements a deadly dance. "Do it quickly." "Working on it," Stephen grunted, rerouting power flows and stabilizing resonance patterns. The crystal matrices began to pulse more regularly, their dangerous overload subsiding. Crixus, seeing his plan failing, broke away from Niraxa and aimed his weapon at the main control crystal. "If I can't have control of the project, no one will." But before he could fire, a massive white form crashed through the laboratory's upper viewport. Frostfang landed with earth-shaking force, its blue eyes blazing with fury, as it positioned itself between Crixus and its mistress. "You were saying something about trembling?" Niraxa's voice carried equal parts amusement and menace. "One word from me, General, and my pet will devour you. Now, shall we discuss your true loyalties?" Crixus's face contorted with rage and fear as Frostfang's massive jaws snapped mere inches from his face. The general's weapon clattered to the floor as he stumbled backward. "This changes nothing," he snarled, though his voice quavered. "The court will never accept—" "The court," a new voice rang out, "will accept whatever I deem appropriate." All heads turned toward the laboratory entrance. A tall, regal figure stood there, his skin a deeper shade of lavender than Niraxa's, his armor bearing the full regalia of the Dominion Emperor. Behind him stood a contingent of Imperial guards, their weapons trained on Crixus. "Father," Neuraxa said, inclining her head slightly but maintaining her commanding presence. Your timing is impeccable. Indeed. The Emperor's eyes swept the room, taking in the stabilized matrices, the scattered weapon burns, and finally settling on Stephen. So, this is the human who has captured my daughter's interest. Stephen met the Emperor's gaze steadily. Your Majesty, I'd bow, but I'm a bit busy preventing a quantum cascade failure. To everyone's surprise, the Emperor laughed, direct, unflinching. Yes, I begin to see the appeal. He turned to Crixus, his expression hardening, unlike some who cloak their treachery in the false loyalty. My Emperor, Crixus prostrated himself. Everything I did was to protect the Dominion from human corruption. Silence. The Emperor's voice could have frozen the sun. You speak of corruption while attempting to destroy research vital to our future? Research that this human just helped salvage. He gestured to his guards. Take him to the detention level. I'll deal with him personally later. As Crixus was dragged away, still protesting, the Emperor approached Stephen's position at the controls. You understand our quantum mechanics well enough to stabilize a cascade failure? Humans are quick study, Stephen replied, making a final adjustment, especially when motivated by survival. And is that all that motivates you? The Emperor's gaze flicked between Stephen and Neuraxa. Your presence here is no coincidence, I suspect. Father, Neuraxa stepped forward. Stephen has proven himself. Peace, daughter. The Emperor raised a hand. I'm well aware of your activities these past hours. His lips twitched at their expressions. The Imperial Guard monitors all areas of the facility. For security, of course. Stephen felt heat rise in his face, but maintained his composure. Then you know I could have sabotaged the project multiple times, but chose to save it instead. Indeed, the Emperor studied him thoughtfully. Tell me, Stephen Drake of Earth, what were your original orders regarding this facility? To investigate its purpose, Stephen answered honestly. Earth's leadership is concerned about Dominion expansion. As they should be, the Emperor nodded. And now that you've seen our work here, what would you report back? Stephen glanced at the crystal matrices, then at Neuraxa, whose amber eyes watched him intently. That the Dominion is developing technology that could either enslave humanity or help us reach the stars together. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable for a long moment. Then unexpectedly he smiled. Perceptive. The crystalline matrices could indeed be weaponized as Crixus and his faction desired, but their true potential lies in revolutionizing interstellar travel. And you needed this frozen world because, Stephen prompted. The cold stabilizes the quantum field, Neuraxa finished, moving to stand beside him. We're not building weapons, Stephen. We're building gateways. The Emperor nodded. The Dominion has reached the limits of conventional space travel. These matrices, when properly tuned, could create a network of instantaneous transportation points across the galaxy. And Earth's location makes it a crucial nexus point, Stephen deduced. That's why you've been studying us. Among other reasons, the Emperor's gaze settled on his daughter with knowing amusement. Though some have found humans fascinating for more personal qualities. Neuraxa lifted her chin defiantly. I make no apologies for my choices, Father. Nor should you. The Emperor's expression softened. Oh, your mother was considered an inappropriate choice too, you know. From a species deemed too primitive for Dominion nobility. This revelation caused a stir among the remaining staff. Neuraxa's eyes widened. You never told me. Some truths reveal themselves when the time is right. The Emperor turned back to Stephen. Which brings us to the present moment. What am I to do with you, Stephen Drake? You possess a knowledge that could be dangerous to the Dominion. Or beneficial to both our peoples, Stephen countered. Earth has its own quantum research. Combined with your crystalline technology, we could advance the project years ahead of schedule. An alliance? The Emperor raised an elegant eyebrow. Bold proposal from someone who infiltrated our facility as a spy. Better than continuing to waste resources watching each other with suspicion, Stephen said. Besides, he glanced at Neuraxa with a hint of a smile. I think we've proven our species can work well together. The Emperor's laugh echoed through the laboratory. Indeed you have. Very well, Stephen Drake. I will consider your proposal for an alliance. But first, His eyes gleamed with mischief. "There is the matter of your relationship with my daughter." Naraxa stepped forward. "Father, the Dominion has traditions after all," the Emperor continued. "Any who would court a royal must prove themselves worthy through trials of combat and wit." Stephen felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of trials?" "Oh, nothing too severe," the Emperor said with a suspiciously casual tone. "Just single combat with Frostfang, a riddle contest with our high mystics, and perhaps a small quest to retrieve a sacred artifact from the ice caves." "Father!" Naraxa protested, though Stephen caught the amused glint in her eye. "Unless," the Emperor added, "you're trembling at the thought." Stephen met Naraxa's gaze, seeing the challenge and affection there. He thought of their first meeting, of her question about why he didn't tremble. His answer hadn't changed. "When do we start?" he asked. The Emperor's smile was predatory. "Immediately. After all, if you're to be my future son-in-law, we should ensure you're properly qualified." As Frostfang patted over, its blue eyes regarding Stephen with what seemed like anticipation, he couldn't help but grin. This wasn't exactly how he'd planned his mission to go. But somehow, facing deadly trials to win the right to court an alien princess seemed perfectly fitting. Naraxa moved close, her body brushing against his. "Still not trembling," she whispered. Stephen pulled her into a kiss that made the Emperor clear his throat, and several guards look away in embarrassment. "Never," he replied when they parted. The ancient combat arena carved into the heart of the ice planet gleamed like polished diamond under the facility's artificial lights. Stephen stood in the center, wearing ceremonial Dominion battle armor that had been hastily modified for human physiology. Across the arena, Frostfang prowled back and forth, its massive form casting shifting shadows on the crystalline walls. "The first trial is simple," the Emperor announced from his observation platform. "Survive 10 minutes against Frostfang without yielding or being incapacitated." "Just survive?" Stephen asked, noting how the beast's blue eyes tracked his every movement. "Unless you think you can defeat him?" The Emperor's tone carried amused challenge. "No human has ever managed that. How many have tried?" "You're the first," the Emperor smiled. "Though I should mention, Frostfang has never lost to any species." In her own viewing box, Naraxa leaned forward, her amber eyes intense. "Remember what I taught you about his hunting patterns?" she called out. The night before, she'd visited his quarters ostensibly to brief him on Dominion combat techniques. The briefing had turned into a more intimate exchange of knowledge. "Ready yourself, human," the Emperor commanded. "The trial begins when..." Frostfang lunged without warning, covering half the arena in a single bound. Stephen rolled aside just as massive jaws snapped shut where he'd been standing. The beast's hunting style was unlike anything on Earth. Part wolf, part big cat, but with an intelligence that made it far more dangerous than either. "Good reflexes," Naraxa's voice carried a hint of pride. "Now show them what else you can do." Stephen circled the arena, keeping his movements fluid and unpredictable. The ceremonial armor was surprisingly responsive, almost seeming to anticipate his intentions. He'd need every advantage it offered. Frostfang charged again, this time feinting left before striking right. But Stephen had seen this pattern during his first encounter with the beast. He ducked under the massive paw swipe and delivered a quick strike to the creature's shoulder joint. Not enough to damage, but sufficient to demonstrate he could have if he'd wanted to. The beast pulled back, its blue eyes showing something new. Respect. "Interesting," the Emperor mused. "He's learning your patterns." "As I'm learning his," Stephen replied, maintaining eye contact with Frostfang. The beast was more than just a powerful hunter. It was a thinking opponent. The next few minutes were a deadly dance of strikes, feints, and near misses. Stephen took a few glancing blows, but managed to avoid anything serious. More importantly, he landed several precise counters that showed he could have inflicted critical damage if he'd been fighting to kill. 5 minutes, the Emperor called out. "Impressive, but Frostfang hasn't shown his full capability yet." As if on cue, the beast's fur began to glow with an inner light. Ice crystals formed in the air around it, and its next roar carried enough force to crack the arena floor. "Now we'll see if you tremble," Naraxa whispered, though her voice carried in the acoustic chamber. Frostfang's enhanced form was a sight to behold. Each step left crystalline footprints that expanded into deadly spikes, forcing Stephen to constantly adjust his positioning. The temperature in the arena plummeted and ice began forming on his armor, but Stephen had anticipated this. During their intimate strategy session, Neuraxa had explained how Frostfang's bioenhancement worked, knowledge she'd shared between passionate embraces and playful challenges. The beast's power came from channeling the planet's natural cold energy, but that same connection made it predictable to someone who understood the principles. "Your pet's impressive," Stephen called out to Neuraxa, dodging another crystal-enhanced swipe. "But did you ever wonder why I let you bring me to this ice world in the first place?" Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. You knew about our research before you came. Earth's quantum scientists detected your energy signatures months ago," Stephen explained, rolling under Frostfang's tail sweep. "We just couldn't prove what they were for." The Emperor leaned forward, intrigued. "So you allowed yourself to be captured?" "I allowed myself to be noticed," Stephen corrected, using Frostfang's own ice formations as stepping stones to gain higher ground. "By someone who might be willing to listen, rather than just conquer." Neuraxa's laugh echoed through the arena. "Clever man, you played me from the start." "Not exactly," Stephen met her gaze even as he evaded another of Frostfang's attacks. "The attraction wasn't part of the plan. That was unexpected." 8 minutes, and the Emperor announced, "Though I'm beginning to think survival isn't your only goal." He was right. Stephen had spent enough time studying Frostfang's patterns, both in their first encounter and now. The beast was powerful, but its enhanced state made its movements more rigid, more predictable, and predictability could be exploited. When Frostfang charged again, Stephen didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped directly into the beast path, dropping into a crouch at the last possible moment. His armored hands shot up, fingers finding a precise pressure point under the creature's jaw, a weakness Neuraxa had revealed during one of their more intimate moments of sharing secrets. Frostfang's momentum carried it over him, but the pressure point strike disrupted its bioenhancement field. The beast crashed to the ground, its glow fading, ice crystals melting around it. The arena fell silent. Stephen stood slowly, turning to face the massive creature. Frostfang rose as well, shaking off the effects of the strike. Their eyes met. Predator to predator, and then, to everyone's astonishment, the beast dipped its head in acknowledgement. "By the ancient stars," one of the observing nobles whispered. "It's submitting to him?" "No," Neuraxa corrected, her voice filled with pride. "It's recognizing him as an equal." The Emperor's laughter filled the arena. "Well done, Stephen Drake. Few understand that the true test was never about defeating Frostfang, but earning his respect." He gestured to a group of attendants. "Prepare the Hall of Mysteries. The second trial awaits." As the arena cleared, Neuraxa descended from her viewing box, her movements carrying that predatory grace that never failed to captivate Stephen. "Impressive performance," she purred, running her fingers along his armor. "Though I'm not sure whether to be flattered or annoyed that you used my intimate revelations to your advantage. I prefer to think of it as putting your teachings to good use," he replied, catching her hand and pulling her closer. The contact sent pleasant shivers through his body. Her bioelectric field seemed to intensify when she was pleased. "Careful," she murmured, though she didn't pull away. "The court is watching. They expect a princess to maintain proper dignity during the trials." "And what do you expect?" Her amber eyes darkened with desire. "I expect you to continue surprising me, Stephen Drake. Though perhaps we should save the more thorough surprises for after the trials." The promise in her voice made his pulse quicken, but their moment was interrupted by the arrival of the High Mystics, tall, ethereal figures whose skins seemed to shift between different shades of blue and silver. "The riddle contest requires a clear mind," the lead mystic intoned, "free from earthly distractions." Neuraxa stepped back, but not before sending a final pulse of bioelectric energy through their joined hands that left Stephen momentarily breathless. "Don't let them intimidate you," she whispered. "Their riddles are designed to trap you in circular logic. Look for the spaces between the words." The Hall of Mysteries lived up to its name. Crystal formations created impossible geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The air itself felt charged with potential, making Stephen's skin tingle in a way entirely different from Nyraxa's touch. 3 riddles, the lead mystic announced. 3 chances to prove your mind worthy of Dominion nobility. Are you prepared, human? Or do you tremble before the weight of ancient wisdom? Stephen smiled, remembering his first encounter with Nyraxa. I think we've established that trembling isn't really my style. The Emperor, who had taken his place on a crystalline throne, nodded approvingly. Begin! The first mystic stepped forward, its form seeming to ripple like water. I am the end of time and space, the beginning of every end. I am the beginning of eternity, the end of time and space. What am I? Stephen considered the wordplay, remembering Nyraxa's advice about spaces between words. The letter E, he answered confidently. The mystic's form solidified in surprise. Correct, but perhaps too simple. Brother, give him the second riddle. The second mystic moved forward, its silver-blue form taking on a more crystalline appearance. We are beings of thought and light, born in the spaces between stars. We dance on quantum strings and sing in frequencies beyond time. What exists everywhere but occupies no space, fills all voids but has no substance? Stephen smiled. This wasn't just a riddle. It was a reference to the Dominion's quantum gateway research. Consciousness, he answered. Or more specifically, quantum consciousness, the force your matrices are trying to harness. A murmur ran through the assembled court. The mystic's form flickered rapidly. You understand our deeper mysteries, human? Most unexpected. Final riddle, the lead mystic announced, all 3 of them moving to form a triangle around Stephen. Their voices merged into one ethereal chorus. What force defies the natural order, breaks the strongest barriers, transforms enemies into allies, and makes the impossible probable? What power can unite different species, challenge ancient prejudices, and create new futures from the ashes of the old? Stephen felt the weight of every eye in the hall upon him. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. Nyraxa's amber gaze burned with intensity. The answer seemed obvious, almost too obvious. Love, he said simply. The mystics remained silent for a long moment. Then the lead one spoke. A human answer. Is it wrong? Stephen challenged. No, the second mystic admitted, but perhaps incomplete. Then let me expand, Stephen said, turning to address the entire court. Love isn't just an emotion. It's a transformative force. It's what allows us to see beyond our differences, to imagine possibilities that fear and prejudice blind us to. It's why your princess could look past my species to see me as an equal. It's why I could trust her enough to reveal Earth's knowledge of your research. He met Nyraxa's eyes. It's what makes me willing to face these trials, not just for political alliance, but for the chance to prove that humans and the Dominion can be more than just conqueror and conquered. The third mystic's form brightened. Now that is a complete answer. The Emperor rose from his throne, his expression thoughtful. You continue to surprise us, Stephen Drake. You've passed both the physical trial of combat and the mental trial of wisdom, but the final test remains, the quest into the ice caves. The most dangerous trial, Nyraxa added, moving to stand beside her father. Many nobles have died attempting to retrieve the sacred artifact. What exactly is this artifact? Stephen asked. The Emperor's eyes gleamed. A crystal of pure quantum resonance formed naturally in the heart of this planet. Legend says it responds only to those worthy of wielding its power. And if I retrieve it, then you will have proven yourself worthy not just of my daughter's hand, but of helping lead the Dominion into a new era. The Emperor gestured to the great doors of the hall. The caves await Stephen Drake. Are you prepared to face their challenges? Stephen caught Nyraxa's eye, saw the mixture of concern and confidence in her expression. When do I start? Now, the Emperor declared. Though first, he glanced at his daughter with knowing amusement. Perhaps a moment to prepare yourself? I believe the princess has some final advice to offer. Nyraxa took Stephen's arm, leading him toward a private antechamber. Indeed I do, Father. Very detailed advice. The court's knowing chuckles followed them as the crystal doors closed behind them, leaving them alone in the softly glowing chamber. "So," Stephen said as Naraxa pressed him against the crystalline wall, her body fitting perfectly against his, "what vital advice did you need to share in private?" Several things," she purred, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest that left trails of tingling energy. "First, the caves aren't just physically dangerous. They respond to thought patterns, creating challenges based on your deepest fears." "Psychological warfare?" He caught her wandering hands, bringing them to his lips. "Any tips for handling that?" Stay focused on what drives you forward, not what holds you back." Her amber eyes darkened as he kissed each fingertip. "Though right now you're making focus rather difficult." "Says the woman who's been sending me bioelectric pulses all day," he countered, pulling her closer. "I nearly missed one of Frostfang's strikes because you decided to heighten my senses." She laughed, the sound rich with promise. "Consider it motivation to survive. I have so many more sensations to share with you." Her lips brushed his ear. "Assuming you return or successfully." "When I return, Iwakurishra," he corrected, capturing her mouth in a kiss that made the crystals around them resonate in harmony. The connection between them had grown stronger with each encounter, their bodies learning each other's rhythms and responses with increasing intimacy. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Narax's skin was glowing with inner light. "The caves will try to make you doubt this," she said softly. "They'll show you visions of betrayal, of this all being a trap. And is it?" He kept his tone light, but they both knew it was a serious question. "What do you think?" She met his gaze steadily. Stephen studied her face, remembering every moment they'd shared, from their first confrontation in the snow to their passionate encounters in her chambers. He thought about how she'd defended him to Crixus, how she'd shared vital information during their intimate moments, how her eyes lit up when he matched her wit for wit. "I think," he said slowly, "that if this were a trap, you wouldn't warn me about the visions. You'd let me walk in blind." Her smile was radiant. "Clever man." She pressed something into his hand, a small crystal that pulsed with her unique energy signature. "Keep this close. It will help you distinguish reality from illusion in the caves." "A token of your affection?" he teased. "A reminder," she corrected, though her eyes sparkled with amusement, "of what awaits your successful return." To demonstrate, she sent a pulse of pleasure through their joined hands that made his knees weak. "That's not fair, he gasped. "All's fair in love and courtship trials," she quoted an apparently universal saying. "Now go. Prove to my father and the court what I already know, that humans are worthy of standing beside the Dominion as equals." She stepped back, her bodysuit reforming into its more formal configuration. "And Stephen?" Her voice carried that dangerous edge he'd first heard in the snow. "Don't keep me waiting too long. My patience has limits." "Wouldn't dream of it, princess." He gave her a mock salute that made her laugh, then turned toward the door that would lead him to his final trial. The caves awaited, with all their physical and psychological challenges. But with Narax's crystal warming against his skin and the memory of her touch still tingling through his body, Stephen felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. After all, he thought with a smile, what were a few deadly caves compared to winning the heart of a Dominion princess? The ice caves were a maze of quantum possibilities, each tunnel shifting and changing like thoughts in a dream. Stephen followed the resonance of Narax's crystal, using it to distinguish real paths from illusions. The deeper he went, the more the walls seemed to pulse with an inner light that responded to his presence. A sound echoed through the crystalline corridors, footsteps that weren't his own. Stephen pressed himself against a wall, letting the ceremonial armor adapt to its reflective surface. Years of special operations training merged with Dominion technology as he became nearly invisible. "Show yourself, human," a cultured voice called out. "Let's dispense with these primitive hiding games." Prince Thalrix emerged from a side tunnel, his lavender skin darker than Narax's, his armor more ornate than even the Emperor's. The prince had been notably absent from the trials, though his reputation preceded him. Narax's originally intended consort, chosen by the conservative faction of the court. "Hiding implies fear," Stephen replied, stepping into view. I was merely observing. Thalrix's lip curled in disgust. You've made quite the spectacle of yourself, haven't you? Charming your way into the princess's bed, manipulating her fascination with human resilience. Jealous? Stephen kept his tone light, though his body was ready for combat. Or just afraid of what human resilience might mean for the Dominion's future? Afraid? Thalrix laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. Of a species that still thinks quantum entanglement is advanced science? No, human. I'm here to restore proper order. The prince raised his hand, and the cave walls rippled with energy. Reality seemed to fracture around them, multiple versions of the same space overlapping. A quantum manipulation field, Stephen realized, far more advanced than anything he'd seen before. Impressive technology, Stephen acknowledged, but if you're so superior, why follow me into the caves? Why not let the trials play out? Because Nyrax's infatuation with you threatens everything we've built. Thalrix's composure cracked. This facility isn't just about transportation networks. The quantum crystal you seek is the key to evolutionary acceleration. With it, the Dominion could guide the development of every species in the galaxy, including humans, especially humans. Thalrix's eyes gleamed with zealous light. Your kind shows potential, but potential must be properly directed, controlled, not allowed to run wild through marriage into the royal line. Stephen felt Nyrax's crystal pulse against his chest, its rhythm matching his heartbeat. And there it is, the real reason for your opposition. You're not afraid of humans being inferior. You're afraid we might be equals. Equals? Thalrix spat the word. Your kind still fights among themselves over primitive resources while we shape the very fabric of reality. Yet here you are, Stephen countered, using advanced technology to ambush one primitive human, not very evolved of you. The prince's response was a wave of quantum energy that shattered the space around them. Stephen rolled aside, letting his armor absorb and redirect the force. His combat with Frostfang had taught him how to read energy patterns, and Thalrix's attacks, while powerful, lacked the beast's natural fluidity. You think a few hours with Nyraxa taught you our ways? Thalrix launched another assault, this one warping gravity itself. Our intimacy goes beyond mere physical coupling. We share thoughts, memories, entire lifetimes of experience. Really? Stephen dodged again, moving closer. Then why didn't she choose you? The question hit harder than any physical blow. Thalrix's control slipped, his quantum field fluctuating wildly. She was meant to be mine. We were designed to be the perfect match. Our genetics carefully selected over generations. But she chose humanity's chaos over your perfect order. Stephen pressed his advantage, both physical and psychological. Must be frustrating knowing all your superior evolution couldn't compete with simple human unpredictability. Enough! Thalrix's rage manifested as pure energy, transforming the cave into a kaleidoscope of deadly force. But Stephen had been counting on this reaction. The prince's power was impressive but unfocused, more concerned with domination than understanding. As the quantum storm raged around them, Stephen felt a different resonance, a deeper harmony coming from further in the caves. The sacred crystal, it was calling to him. Using Thalrix's own energy as cover, Stephen pushed deeper into the cave system. The prince followed, his attacks becoming increasingly erratic. You can't escape! These caves are a quantum labyrinth! Who's trying to escape? Stephen called back. I'm just following the crystal's call. Can't you hear it? He could tell from Thalrix's hesitation that he couldn't. The prince's connection to quantum forces was purely technological, while Stephen was letting instinct guide him, the same instinct that had helped him understand Frostfang, that had drawn him to Nyraxa. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber where reality itself seemed to bend. In the center, floating in a column of pure energy, was a crystal unlike any other. Its facets contained what looked like entire galaxies, its resonance singing in harmony with the smaller crystal Nyraxa had given him. Step away from the crystal, Thalrix commanded, his voice echoing with artificial power. Its energies were meant for Dominion royalty, not some primitive. He stopped as the crystal pulsed, responding to Stephen's presence. Streams of quantum energy began flowing, not toward the prince's advanced technology, but toward the simple resonance crystal from Naraxa. Impossible, Thalrix whispered. The sacred crystal responds only to those worthy of shaping evolution itself. Maybe, Stephen said, stepping closer to the floating crystal. Evolution isn't about shaping or controlling. Maybe it's about adapting, growing, finding new ways to connect. The sacred crystal's light intensified, and Stephen felt knowledge flooding his consciousness. Not just scientific understanding, but deeper truths about the nature of reality itself. He saw the quantum networks that connected all living things, the patterns of possibility that dance between stars. The crystal shows each person what they're ready to see. A new voice echoed through the chamber. Naraxa stepped from a quantum fold in space, her form radiating power. Father suspected you might try something like this, cousin. Thalrix's face contorted with rage. You followed me. I've been watching since you entered the caves. Her amber eyes met Stephen's with pride. Though I must admit, I enjoyed watching my human prove himself against your technological superiority. This is absurd. Thalrix gestured at the sacred crystal, still resonating with Stephen. He's not even Dominion. The crystal's power should be rejecting him. Should it? The Emperor's voice preceded his appearance as he stepped through another quantum fold. The crystal responds to potential, Thalrix, not to our preconceptions of what that potential should look like. Stephen understood then. The trials weren't just about proving myself worthy of Naraxa. They were about proving humanity's readiness for true quantum evolution. Indeed, the Emperor smiled. Though I suspect my daughter's choice had already demonstrated that readiness. Love, after all, is the ultimate force for evolution, breaking down barriers, creating new possibilities. A lesson you never learned, cousin, Naraxa addressed Thalrix. You sought to control the crystal's power, to impose your will on evolution itself. But true power comes from understanding, from connection. As if in response, the sacred crystal pulsed again. Energy flowed between it and Naraxa's smaller crystal, creating a harmony that filled the chamber. Stephen felt his consciousness expanding, connecting with Naraxa's in ways that made their previous intimacy seem pale in comparison. This is what you feared, he realized, looking at Thalrix. Not that humans would remain primitive, but that we might evolve in ways you couldn't control. The prince's shoulders slumped in defeat. The court will never accept this. The court, the Emperor said firmly, will accept what I decree. And I decree that humanity has proven itself ready for partnership with the Dominion, both diplomatically and... He glanced between Stephen and Naraxa with amusement. Personally, Naraxa moved to Stephen's side, her body fitting against his perfectly as the crystal's resonance enveloped them both. Still not trembling, she whispered. Only with anticipation, he replied, pulling her into a kiss that sent quantum ripples through the chamber. The Emperor cleared his throat. Perhaps we should return to the surface for the formal ceremonies. Though, his eyes twinkled with mischief. I suspect you two will want some private time to explore your new quantum connection. The return to the surface was triumphant. Stephen carried both crystals, the sacred artifact and Naraxa's token, now permanently linked in quantum resonance. The court assembled in the Great Hall, where news of what had transpired in the caves spread quickly through quantum whispers. Thalrix was stripped of his position and sent to a distant outpost for reflection on the true nature of evolution. The Emperor's guards ensured his departure was swift and final. The formal binding ceremony between Stephen and Narax combined both Dominion and human traditions, creating something entirely new, much like their relationship itself. As they exchanged quantum-enhanced vows, their consciousness merged in ways that transcended physical intimacy, sharing thoughts, emotions, and possibilities across multiple quantum realities. The sacred crystal has chosen, the Emperor announced to the assembled court, not just a union between two beings, but a path forward for both our species. The Quantum Gateway Project will proceed as a joint venture between Earth and the Dominion, with my daughter and her human consort as its directors. Later, in their private chambers, Naraxa traced patterns of light across Stephen's skin. Do you remember our first meeting? she asked, her touch sending waves of pleasure through their quantum bond. When I threatened to have Frostfang devour you? As I recall, he pulled her closer, enjoying how their energies intertwined. You were quite disappointed that I didn't tremble in fear. Yes. Her amber eyes glowed with passion. Though I've since discovered other ways to make you tremble. Their laughter echoed through quantum space as they celebrated their union in ways that merged physical passion with cosmic consciousness. The sacred crystal, now installed in their chambers, pulsed in harmony with their emotions, creating patterns of light that danced across the crystalline walls. You know, Stephen said later, as they lay entwined in sheets that shifted through multiple quantum states, Earth's going to have quite a reaction to all this. A human marrying a Dominion princess, accessing advanced quantum technology. Afraid they'll tremble? Neuraxa teased. More like afraid they won't stop asking questions. Scientists tend to get excited about things like quantum evolution and interspecies consciousness sharing. She propped herself up on one elbow, her silver-white hair cascading around them both. Then we'll show them what's possible when fear gives way to understanding. After all, her smile turned predatory in the way he'd first fallen in love with. You've proven quite thoroughly that humans can handle whatever the Dominion has to offer. Speaking of handling things, he pulled her down for a kiss that sent ripples through nearby quantum fields. Perhaps another demonstration is in order? Their passion merged with the quantum energies around them, creating a feedback loop of pleasure and consciousness that expanded beyond physical limits. In that space between moments, between realities, they were more than just human and Dominion. They were the future they'd chosen to create together. And in the distance, Frostfang's howl echoed across the frozen wasteland, a reminder of where their journey had begun and a herald of all the adventures yet to come.